Ah, yes. One of the most gut-wrenching moments in anime. Erwin and Armin are two brilliant characters that elevated the status of the Scout Regiment and the entire show. And in episode 18 of season 3, titled Midnight Sun, we were forced to watch our beloved characters fight to decide who to save between Armin and Erwin. And, spoiler alert, Armin was saved. But, was it the correct decision? Who was the best asset for the Scouts based on what they brought to the table? Here's what I think. The circumstances of Armin's death. Armin had just taken down the Colossal Titan, and what did it cost?
Everything.
But here's how it happened. Without knowing it, Jean had come up with a great plan to attack the Colossal Titan head-on and try to create a diversion for Mikasa to strike. Bertholdt then observed what was happening and easily blew them all off with his steam attack, injuring Mikasa in the process. Why is that a great plan, you ask? Well, as Armin later pointed out, the Colossal Titan is unfit for a battle of attrition. Making it lose steam and telling Armin to watch from afar while the rest of the squad took it on was what made Armin notice the weight loss. With this, Armin makes two theories. One, the muscle mass and not the bones of the Colossal are being consumed. And two, the Colossal can move while it's emitting steam. With this information, he makes a plan involving just him and Eren, where Bertholdt is taken down. He wakes Eren up, telling him the plan, and promises to get out of the way when things literally get heated. He claims that he still has to see the ocean before he dies, and so he will not let anything get in the way of that. "Have I ever lied to you in my life?" he said. And so, he goes up to Bertholdt, attaches his ODM hooks to the Colossal Titan's teeth, and he tries to buy time for Eren. But Bertholdt, being the ever-merciful prick that he is, he wants to give Armin a quick death, so he turns up the gas knob, burning Armin to a crisp. Armin holds on through the entire thing, entrusting his desire to see the sea, to Eren. The diversion works. Eren comes out of his Titan's hardening he used to close the hole in the wall, and is able to take down the Colossal as a human, which was probably the most satisfying thing about this whole saga, to be honest. Armin's plan not only works to kill Bertholdt, but at the same time, they're able to close the hole in the wall Maria, as Eren walks across the rooftops and stares down at Armin's dead body. Or does he? The circumstances of Erwin's death. Being the commander of the Scout Regiment, Erwin was at the top of the wall, surveying what was happening on both sides of the battle. On one side, Bertholdt had turned into the Colossal, creating an explosion that killed most of the scouts. And on the other side, Zeke was sitting behind a stretch of houses, with his Titans forming a semicircle around the elite scout squads and the new recruits. Then, he did what no one was expecting. He began throwing massive rocks with the scattershot effect for maximum damage. From the moment Zeke started throwing, Erwin must have known. The people from Marley had them in check. Seeing as most of the Scout Regiment was left on the other side of the battle, he had to come down to assist. They had to think of a way to make sure that these people did not pose a threat to humanity's chances of discovering the truth and defeating the Titans. So, Erwin came up with a plan. A plan he probably wished he didn't have to come up with. The suicide charge. The entire recruits, along with Erwin, were going to do a cavalry charge at the Beast Titan, while shooting their signal flares towards the Beast Titan. The aim of this was to somewhat reduce his accuracy while they advanced. But behind the crazy suicide charge, their talisman, Levi, was making his way to Zeke using the Titan Zeke himself had positioned to lock the scouts in. He was going to get to the Beast Titan and take it down, and the plan worked exactly as Erwin planned it. He had had an intimate final moment with Levi about how his lifelong dream of vindicating his father's opinions was now going to come to an end without him ever knowing the truth. But with motivation from Levi, Erwin managed to rally the recruits together, gave them their final mission together, and backed it up with the greatest war speech and rally cry in history. Him calling them "my soldiers" still gives me chills to this day. Then he got blown away. Levi took down the beast, and Erwin was dead. Or was he? The dilemma. Well, you probably already know this, but neither Armin nor Erwin were dead. No, for Isayama, watching your favorite character die horribly is letting you off easy. Why, you can watch their loved ones await their return without knowing they're dead. You can watch their loved ones cry about their death with emotional throwbacks for the next 1,000 episodes. Or, worst of all, you can watch their loved ones fight and almost kill each other over who should live and who should die. That last category is where we now find ourselves. Good old Flock had decided that the world needed its devil back and carried Erwin all the way back to where Eren and the crew were, in search of the Titan Serum with Levi. Meanwhile, Eren had just realized that Armin was still breathing and tried to get Captain Levi to administer the serum to Armin so he could eat Bertholdt and become the Colossal. And just before Levi could hand the serum over to Eren, Flock appeared with Erwin. Well, not just before, because with the time Levi spent just handing over the syringe to Eren, I could have carried Erwin back to base myself. But anyways, there they were. Armin crispy cooked on one side of the roof, and Erwin, innards hanging out of his body on another side of the roof. Eren and Mikasa began fighting Flock and Levi verbally and physically over who should take the serum and eat Bertholdt. Not once did anyone ask Bertholdt what he wanted. But for me, the most interesting struggle was the verbal/mental argument about who brought more to the Scouts. I mean, by any logic, there's no way the commander of a military unit is dying and the squad or battalion chooses to save a private instead. Erwin should have been saved based on his rank alone. However, I want us to look at the case for both of them in terms of who brought more to the Scouts. That is, who was going to be more valuable between Erwin and Armin. The case for Armin. I think Eren made a pretty good case for Armin in terms of what he brought to the table. Armin was super smart, and despite what he appeared to lack in terms of natural physical strength, have you seen Armin's abs? For his previous feats, he uncovered Annie's identity and was almost successful in confining her underground. He advised them on moving at night to limit casualties, and he came up with the idea of Eren plugging the hole in the walls. But his magnum opus still remains the way he took down the Colossal Titan, the god of destruction, with just a concussed Eren and a courageous Armin. For the most part, what Armin brought to the table was his big brain. He is a skilled fighter, of course. Getting to the end of Isayama's crazy story with no battle wounds that are not your own doing is quite the crazy feat after all. Without a doubt, Armin was a very valuable asset that brought much to the Scouts. But was he more valuable than Erwin and even Eren, as Eren claimed? The case for Erwin. In the scene on the roofs of Shigansha, Eren makes a good case for Armin. But Levi really doesn't. And I feel like that's partly because of Levi's own personality, which I might make an entire video about in the future. Or maybe it was because there was just so much to talk about that all he could say as a defense was, but he was right. Well, when you put Erwin's contribution to the Scouts in context up until that point. Despite claims that he was a huge gambler, he was the one who created the scouting formation for expeditions beyond the walls. The arrangement of the Scouts and the briefings on the signal flares and their meaning made this system basically a living radar where they could know what areas beyond the walls were more dangerous. This system, of course, saved lives, and without this system, they wouldn't even have been able to discover who Annie was. Also, he was a good judge of character and was able to surround himself with the most unique personalities, like Levi and his underground squad, Hanji, and even Mike. He constantly highlighted Eren's importance and even elevated Armin to lead the mission to uncover Reiner's position within the walls. He was a true leader. Let's not forget that he was also able to orchestrate the overthrow of a government that had a chokehold on authority for about 100 years, all from prison. Without a doubt, Erwin was unique. He elevated the Scouts from a laughingstock under Keith Shadis to a team everyone could cheer for when they went beyond the walls. No one before or after him could fill his boots. And so, this is my verdict. Armin was brilliant, but like I said, he was just another unique character that Erwin had the knack for recruiting and elevating in the Scouts. In my example at the beginning of how Jean's leadership under pressure allowed Armin to figure out a way to beat Bertholdt is an example of how Armin shines brightest under good leadership. If we considered their strengths alone, Erwin should have been the one to be saved. Eren was wrong in my opinion. However, I do think Erwin had already gotten closure. He had seen what was truly important in fighting and dying for the love of his friends and comrades who did the same for him. Armin, like Eren said most compellingly, had actual human goals. He still wanted to see the sea. So for the sake of the story, Armin was the right choice to revive. Armin eventually got to see the sea because he forged forward with the Scouts. And you can see more awesome videos too if you click one on the screen. I'll see you there.